Greetings, chess friends. Today, we're going to talk about a good counter weapon against the Sicilian defense. Sicilian is, of course, one of the most tried and true openings where black counters in the center. Many games at all levels using the Sicilian. However, today we're going to focus on d4. Immediately capture c3. Black captures and knight takes c3. The so-called Smith-Morra Gambit. Now, to be clear, when black plays c5, the main move is knight f3. Okay, I would recommend the main lines. They are the main lines for a reason. But looking at d4, you do need to take this pawn, but you don't need to take this one. So there are other alternatives, such as knight f6, but I'm not going to get into that much today. Knight c3. Okay, black has a few options here, but let's first talk about the idea behind the gambit. White is down a pawn, but has rapid development. Notice black has every single piece on the back rank and is behind schedule, so to speak. So let's jump into a few options here. Knight c6, knight f3 is how you typically see these games go. Bishop c4, or bishop f4. Or other options here. And white is trying to rapidly develop in castle. Notice again, white with the big lead at the cost of a pawn. That's really what's at the heart of gambit play in general. You're giving a pawn or two, usually not more than that, for free moves. White has free extra moves. Time is of the essence in chess. Let's jump to our first example, which is a very fast example. E4, c5, d4. Hyper-aggressive Smith-Morra Gambit. C takes d4, which is the best move. c3, the pawn gambited again. And here, bishop c4 immediately. Black makes a very natural move, which is a complete blunder. Knight f6. This falls for a classic trap. Remember this one, folks. e5. What is that? Free pawn captures. Blunder alert. Notice the queens staring at each other, but we're not taking the queen first, but bishop takes f7. Removing the defender, the only legal move is king takes bishop, and then, let's just put it on the board, queen takes queen, completely winning for white. So really a big error there, knight f6, allowing e5. You could play here, let's say e6 or knight c6, and the game goes on. So quick blunder there, just a cool one. Let's see a very strong Grandmaster really fall into the fire in this one. He accepts the gambit. Again, playing that tactical style. White is a strong player in the 2200s FIDE, but certainly should be no match for a 2674 Grandmaster. Bishop c4, let's see. Black certainly not going to fall for any early traps. Knight ge7. And this is how many of the high-level games go. Bishop g5 and f6. Okay, and that move does look a little strange. Notice the knight has already moved, so we're not worried about blocking that. We know the old expression, never play f6, but white doesn't have a check here, but let's keep that in mind. Here, bishop retreats to e3. It does still look nice with white having so many pieces developed. Nice safe castle. At the cost of a pawn, it doesn't look so bad. If you're black, you have extra pawn in your pocket, but all these problems to solve. Our king, the bishop, there really is kind of a log jam, so to speak, in black's position. b5, a good forward move. Retreating the bishop. Bishop b7. Okay, we're solving some problems. But knight d5. And gets a question mark from the chess.com engine, but this is a very thematic move you see in variations. And black says, let me take that. I'm not afraid. I've seen this before. E takes. Now, this does a few things. White got one pawn for the minor piece. Remember, we had already gambited a pawn, so white is down a full piece. White, full piece down. Threatening this knight, but also opening the E file and creating a lot of havoc. This pawn also takes another step. Black wants to keep the material. Sometimes we give it back, but here d6. This move really creates, like I said earlier, a log jam in black's position because this pawn is guarded by the queen. The bishop will not be able to move, and that means your king is stuck in the center. For that minor piece, black really has to walk a tightrope here to survive. Knight c4 is actually quite a mistake. Rook c1. Engine also likes rook e1. Knight f5, and now rook e1. Every white piece is participating. This pawn really, really strong. Let's take a moment and just see what if here he captures the pawn. He takes the bishop on e3. But what if he does take this pawn, let's say with the knight on c? Actually, this is really, really scary. Notice it's check with any bishop move. So we go find the biggest piece we can. Their queen. White wins. Okay. Rook e1. Knight takes e3, trying to slow things down. But here, I love this in-between move. Notice this knight is pinned. It might appear like our queen is also under attack, but white is looking for other moves and comes up with knight h4. Incredible move. And at this moment, 2 pieces behind, but the black king can't move, is under fire. And remember, we mentioned the move f6. Now the thought of queen h5 is very serious. Rook pointing at the king, and I would not like this position with black, despite being rich with 2 pieces in our pocket. Here, bishop e7, what a move to make. A good one, but under huge pressure. Rook takes e3. Knight takes h4. Let's look if knight takes rook, what would land queen h5. And engine finding checkmate here. The only move here, g6. If you move the king, queen f7 is mate. Don't forget about our bishop from a long distance away. So g6, but the knight can just take that in a classic tactic. Nearly checkmate. If pawn takes, queen doesn't take the rook, but queen takes g6 leads to the same checkmate. So a very scary situation. Real game goes knight takes knight. Rook takes e7. Queen has to take. If the king moves here, again, rook f7, and we have this type of a potential for a windmill tactic if the king goes back this way. Let's just incorporate more pieces. Our queen, and now it's just checkmate coming. They can block with bishop or queen, and checkmate comes. So he takes the rook, pawn takes queen, and now we're clearly ahead in material, but it's still close. The danger of the king is really what's going to do black in. Funny he can't castle either. But bishop d5, really trading away the best black piece. And bishop c6 immediately loses to rook takes c6. That was a heck of a game. And I love to see the lower rated players upset players. You don't usually see high 26s get upset too often. I did want to show quite a few of these upsets because that's essentially the idea behind the Smith-Morra. At the under 2000 level, I would say it's very, very good fighting opening. You'll learn a lot about attacking. But as you get to the master level and above, there really isn't too much room for this opening. Black has to know what to do, but really white will use it as a surprise only. So here we go. Another strong player at 2370 playing a Grandmaster. And black plays a typical Sicilian type move, a6. Bishop c4, castles, and bishop g5. Notice again, a couple different moves here, but white just going for that rapid development in castle. Morphy-like in his attacking moves. So if you like attacking chess, give the Smith-Morra a try. That's what these videos are all about. Watch the video, look at a few games, just get in there and play some blitz and see what happens. As black, if you're a Sicilian player, beware, be alert. I'm sure you've already faced this before. h6, bishop e3. Again, pawn moves, one move attacks don't really scare us too much, but it did chase the bishop away. And knight d5. Very thematic move. Rook b8, again, wanting no part of that capture like the last game, and rook c1. Another really nice move here. Black intent on not capturing, but the problems are very, very similar. Here, we would retake with the pawn, and if you do want to keep the minor piece, you really have to, again, walk a tightrope like the last game. Here, for example, d6. a5 was played in the game, and knight bounces back to f4. Maybe not the very best move, but you can imagine being a little scared to just leave a knight hanging there over and over again. Knight ge5, not exchanging pieces, but allowing a different exchange. Knight takes knight, knight takes knight, and knight h5. A pesky move again, basically telling this bishop, you need to stay put and guard this pawn. So queen a4, and maybe black overextends a bit too much. Bishop f4, a really good alert move. And as we can see, white has so many well-placed active pieces. And I include the queen, notice, which hasn't even moved. It's a good piece. She's so powerful, pointing in all directions. Keep that in mind. So white, very active here. Black still king in the center. D6, bishop takes, pawn takes, and check this out. Knight takes G7. Not even a move on my radar. When I look at this position here, captures, I'd be thinking other moves like queen F3 or even just knight back to G3 or F4. Those type of moves come to my mind, but knight G7. So alert. Bishop takes, what else? And can you see the follow-up coming? Queen D6. A really nice move. That not only keeps the king locked in the center, threatens the rook, but after queen D6, the king cannot castle away, but really this rook has no good squares. There's no move to make. So if you move up the board, notice rook takes C8 is nearly checkmate on the next move. You can't move your rook anywhere else. Rook A8 runs into queen C6. And that's going to take the rook after the king gets out of check. So bishop D7 is the real game. Queen takes the rook. What else? King E7, queen B7. White is completely winning. That knight takes G7 sacrifice was a stunner, even for a grandmaster. Rook D8, rook D1. King E8, rook C7, intensifying the pressure. White is unstoppable here. Rook takes D7. What a move. You have to take with the rook. And then queen takes B5. I love this combination. Ending with a pin, which you can't get out of, and the threat of bishop to A4 really finishes the job. So that is pretty remarkable, actually. Notice you can't move the king away. We'll just take the rook, and king D8 runs into a little problem. Queen B8 checkmate. So stunning upset there. Here, a game from two players in the United States, an international master and Black, a grandmaster. So, of course, Smith-Morra here offering the pawn, and Black goes for this queen C7 idea. Typical, no good discoveries just yet on the bishop, so white simply castles, and knight B5. Black should expect that move or play A6 before putting your queen there. But usually this is an okay thing to do in the Sicilian as you kick the knight right away. But white, with extra pieces awake, goes for the immediate strike E5. E5 is a really deep move. I don't want to get into all the details, but essentially, if you do take this, you're just going to be way behind in development. Notice all the pieces awake, and this bishop and queen are just ready to strike. The engine absolutely loves white's position here. So, for example, queen B8, queen D4, threatening bishop F4, and tons and tons of problems for black here. So he goes knight G4 in the game, knight D6 check. Doesn't feel comfortable, but black gets some pieces off the board here at least, and maybe could castle, but goes for the strike. B5, bishop B3. Castles. Okay, black has gotten to safety. Black has still that extra pawn in our pocket, but white isn't done attacking yet. Usually that castle is the signal that black has survived some attack, but here, still white with a great lead in development, and this pawn just absolutely in black's territory, suffocating almost the black position. A5, going for queenside expansion, bishop G5, A4, bishop takes knight, and takes. That does separate this, but it seems like white has no attacking piece. Wait a minute. There's one. Knight B4. Okay, we need to keep on that diagonal. One attacking piece. Knight D5. There's two. And the queen, ready to strike. Very quickly, white has maneuvered to an attack here. Queen takes D6, almost desperate. Here at queen G4 check. The only legal move is king H8, and black resigns after the next move. Stunning. Knight F5. Knight F5. What a way to defeat a grandmaster and finish this game. Knight F5 is threatening checkmate. Knight F5 is threatening the queen. So we have to ask ourselves, what if pawn takes? You don't just laugh and say, triple pawns, gotcha. But queen takes, and you can't guard H7. This square cannot be guarded. It's incredible that black has an extra piece here, and an extra pawn, and is completely locked away from their king. Queen takes h7, checkmate is coming. Knight f5 is a stunner. You do have a try rook g8, but we just capture. Rook takes our queen, and then we just take back. We picked up an extra rook in that exchange. So white completely winning in material, completely winning, knight f5, and this game is over. That there. Let's move along to the next one, and this was another roughly 300-point upset. So I think that, again, proves the point here of the danger of this opening. So Sicilian players, be alert, but really, in general, black should be fine. Okay, e6 and a6, this kind of con setup, so to speak, K-A-N, and white goes along their merry way, exactly the same moves we've seen, right? Castles quickly. b5, okay, no big deal, we have to move. And rook a7. I've actually seen this line played before and like it, of sorts, until I found out about what's going to happen in this game, the sacrifice. The point is to play rook d7 and really secure your position. Bishop e3, rook d7, queen e2, knight c6, rook c1, and knight takes b5. I remember putting this funny idea into an old computer. This is maybe in the 2000s. And here, the computer did kind of come up with this in some other moves. Maybe the knight was on f6 or something, bishop on e7, but very, very similar position. And this whole rook d7 idea was kind of thwarted by this sacrifice. Remember, white was down a pawn to begin with. So now, material count, black is up a piece for just one pawn. Queen a8. Bishop a4. It's all about the pressure here. With the king at the end of this line, the rook is included. We can have the knight join the party. It's really scary here, even though black is ahead in material. Knight ge7, knight d4. Notice, obviously, you cannot take. Queen takes, rook is checkmate. So he plays rook c7, queen b6. That hits that rook. King d7, a big mistake. Knight b5. Not a fun position to play. Again, you're up material, but look at the material. It's not very good. It's not well placed. And white is threatening checkmate. Rook, queen takes rook, and knight takes pawn is checkmate. Rook c8, and knight takes d6. Brilliancy. A really nice move, bringing the king out. I love those type of moves, which are just luring the king. Now we're 2 pieces down, but look at this king. Has to give 1 piece back, and the attack rages on. 2 pieces down, back to 1. Notice this is check. He plays king e5. You don't survive long when you're way out here. But actually, white pauses for a moment, takes another minor piece, and white is up material. White is about to promote this pawn. And white still has the pleasure of attacking this king on e5. So black realized after all this that it's time to resign right here. Completely winning. And that one, again, got really out of hand. So last one, we won't go through the entire game. I'm sure there's much better commentary than me on this type of thing. But just wanted to point out, 2023, we had these two guys. And Hikaru playing d4, c3, and the Smith-Morra Gambit. So there is some merit to it at the highest levels as well. This was a rapid game, but again, actually white goes on to win this interesting game. Okay, so won't cover this anymore, but just wanted to kind of point out that it is playable at the high levels. I would recommend under 2000 to play it and kind of be aware the Open Sicilian is really the main lines for a reason, but in general, you should be aware of the Smith-Morra. If you play the black pieces, get ready because somebody's going to play it against you. In general, I think the idea of giving material for the initiative is very, very important to your chess development when you're improving from, let's say, the ratings 800, 900, 1000 and up. You need to learn these things and how important mobilizing the pieces is quickly, safety of the king, getting the opponent's king caught in the center. All of that is rolls up to the gambit play nicely. So hope this was helpful for everybody. Some real life examples, some upsets here, even against Grandmasters. And that's what we're hoping to do, show some fun games. Hope you learned something and enjoy. Thanks again for the view, and please subscribe when you have a second.